public imagination is fixated on the wrong vector. You have been conditioned to look to the skies for hypersonic missiles, a loud, kinetic, and strategically obsolete form of attack. The real protocol is silent. It targets not cities, but the central nervous system of finance and data upon which the modern state depends. The primary vector is not airborne. It is benthic. CSIS reports confirm that over 95% of all global data and trillions of dollars in daily financial transactions travel through a few hundred fiber optic cables on the ocean floor. These are the unprotected arteries of the global economy. Severing a handful of these choke points is not an act of war. It is an act of systemic financial liquidation. The secondary vector is orbital. While the undersea network is severed, our USI analysts identify a parallel threat: satellite blinding. A coordinated deployment of directed energy weapons and co-orbital ASATs can induce total sensory deprivation. No GPS, no high-frequency trading, no secure military communications. It is an engineered blackout. This dual-front attack creates a specific strategic condition: the blind Leviathan. It is a nation-state, rich in kinetic assets, yet rendered informationally insolvent. It cannot verify its liquidity, cannot coordinate a defense, and cannot see an enemy. Its conventional strength is mathematically nullified. This is not theoretical. Leaked EU documents show senior officials plotting to organize resistance against the non-compliant Hungarian government, a blueprint for internal political destabilization. When this asymmetric protocol is applied to a nuclear-armed power, you create a blind Leviathan facing a solvency crisis. Its decision matrix collapses to a single terminal option. Escalation to its strategic arsenal becomes its only remaining form of leverage. This is not a mistake, it's a feature. The motive is not conquest, it is bankruptcy. A direct, kinetic war against a peer competitor is a negative-sum game with an unacceptable political and economic cost. The modern protocol bypasses this. It is a blueprint to engineer a solvency crisis, forcing the target state to liquidate its own treasury and political capital. In a protracted conflict, it was designed to lose financially. The war in Ukraine is not a regional dispute. It is a balance sheet attack. The primary target was never Kyiv, it was the Russian central bank. This is not speculation. This is documented statecraft. Leaked files from the European Union detail a senior official authoring a project proposal with the explicit goal to organize resistance against the Orban regime in Hungary. This is the template. Leverage internal dissent and external pressure to create systemic instability from within. These are not isolated incidents. They are features of a geopolitical operating system designed for non-kinetic regime change. Applied to Russia, this protocol's objective was to manufacture a terminal domestic liability. CSIS analysis confirms the strategic intent: mire the target in an unpopular, resource-draining war that erodes domestic consent and accelerates capital flight. The conflict becomes a self-liquidating vector. Every ruble spent on artillery shells is a ruble that cannot be used to subsidize food, fund pensions, or maintain internal stability. It is a solvency crisis masquerading as a border war. This manufactured weakness forces a predictable and lethal pivot. When a state's conventional military and economic options are systematically dismantled, its strategic calculus is reduced to a single variable. It is forced to escalate to the only domain where it retains leverage. This is not an act of aggression. It is a mathematical function of desperation. By removing all conventional exits, the protocol forces the target to embrace its most dangerous asymmetric assets. For a declining nuclear-armed power, That final leverage is its strategic arsenal. Unlike Venezuela, which could be allowed to collapse into economic ruin, a nuclear state does not have that option. A solvency crisis creates a launch-on-warning posture born from financial annihilation. The blueprint designed to contain a rival without kinetic cost becomes the direct accelerant for systemic global risk. The model guarantees that a state facing engineered bankruptcy will pull the entire system down with it. The core of this new warfare protocol is a mathematical arbitrage of violence. The kinetic cost model has been inverted. According to analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, the dominant exchange is no longer tank versus tank. It is the $5 million main battle tank versus the $500 FPV drone. This is not a fair fight. It is an economic execution. For every high-value asset a state fields, an adversary can deploy 10,000 disposable threats. This is not warfare. It is an industrial-scale asset liquidation strategy. The objective is not to conquer territory in a single battle, but to impose such a catastrophic and asymmetric replacement cost that the target state is bled into insolvency. The tank becomes a liability, a drain on liquidity that cannot be sustained. This economic inversion enables what strategists term the democratization of violence. The capability to neutralize state-of-the-art military hardware is no longer monopolized by superpowers. It has been decentralized, commoditized, and made available to non-state actors, proxies, and second-tier powers for the price of consumer electronics. This is a permanent and irreversible shift in the global balance of power. The protocol is simple. Force a non-compliant state to defend itself with assets that are exponentially more expensive than the threats attacking them. This systematically drains their treasury, triggers hyperinflation, and manufactures a solvency crisis. The battlefield is merely the theater for this economic attack vector. The real target is the central bank. The modern protocol for state collapse is not prototyped on the battlefield. It is beta-tested in gray zones, nations designated as disposable proxy laboratories. The objective is to refine asymmetric attacks in a low-cost, deniable theater. Analysts at CSIS identify these zones not by overt kinetic conflict, but by their vulnerability to manufactured solvency crises and engineered political dissent. This is not theoretical. It is documented policy. Leaked European Union files show a senior official authoring a project proposal with the explicit goal to organize resistance against the Orban regime in Hungary. This is the blueprint in action, leveraging internal political fractures from an external supranational vector. The kinetic cost is zero. The political leverage is absolute. This isn't a mistake. It's a feature of the system. The Hungarian protocol targets political cohesion. The Venezuelan protocol, now a historical case study, targeted economic solvency. Vintage photos show a once rich nation, but its oil wealth became the vector for its collapse. This provided the terminal blueprint for decashing a resource-rich state, a playbook that forms the underlying threat calculus in any escalation involving Iranian energy assets. These are not separate crises. They are different experiments in the same laboratory, perfecting the non-kinetic kill chain before it is deployed against a primary target. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not policy. It is a mathematical protocol dictated by geography and physics. With ICBM flight times measured in minutes, waiting for kinetic impact, confirmation guarantees the total liquidation of your own strategic assets. Therefore, the system is engineered to retaliate based on the warning of an attack, not its arrival. This removes human hesitation and makes retaliation a systemic certainty. This doctrine's systemic liability is its absolute dependence on data from early warning systems. A sophisticated cyber attack targeting satellite uplinks or ground-based radar creates what CSIS analysts term the fog of digital war. The command node is blinded. It cannot differentiate between a system error and a deliberate, hostile action designed to mask an incoming first strike. The commander is now facing a solvency crisis of information. The protocol for this scenario, as outlined in RUSI war games, is grim. An unexplained loss of sensory data during heightened geopolitical tension is interpreted by the system as a decapitation attempt. The choice is no longer human. Hesitation is a variable that has been engineered out of the equation. For a state already cornered by asymmetric economic attacks, this manufactured digital ambiguity becomes a mathematical trigger. When all other forms of leverage are gone, the strategic arsenal is the only asset left. The fog of digital war doesn't create a dilemma. It forces a pre-calculated response. The fear of being disarmed compels a launch. Escalation becomes the only logical path to survival. This is not an accident. It is the terminal phase of the blueprint. The operational blueprint for state failure has been field-tested and refined. Venezuela serves as the historical control group, a case study in how a nation, once among the world's richest, can be systematically dismantled through non-kinetic means. The model is proven. A parallel protocol is documented in EU internal files, outlining strategies to organize resistance and subvert a non-compliant member state like Hungary from within. This is not theory. It is established doctrine. These attacks are not designed for shock and awe. They are engineered to trigger a solvency crisis. The primary vector is no longer the carrier group. It is the global financial plumbing. CSIS and RUSI briefs consistently identify subsea data cables as the single most critical, unprotected infrastructure in the world economy. An escalation in a theater like Iran demonstrates the market's sensitivity to physical choke points. A digital choke point offers the same leverage with near-zero kinetic cost and perfect deniability. The calibration forecast. Within the next 12 months, expect a targeted, attribution-impossible data blackout affecting a secondary European financial hub. This will manifest as a deep-sea trawler accident, severing a key cable bundle in the North Atlantic. The event is not the war. It is the test fire. Its purpose is to measure the contagion velocity of the resulting liquidity panic and to grade the West's response time. It is a message demonstrating the capability to disconnect a state from the global ledger at will. The test will be considered a success